Anyway, my name is Terry Galoina, and I'm a volunteer at the event, and I'm so glad to be here, and so glad that y'all are here too. And I just wanted to take a moment and welcome y'all for the next session, which is the future of the SOC in an AI-driven universe. And Dave Gold will be our presenter. Dave is Vice President of Solutions Engineering and Americas Field CTO at SentinelOne, leading strategy for top clients. He has 20+ years in information security with leadership roles at startups and major cybersecurity firms. Former Vice President of ProtectWise, which was acquired by Verizon, he's helped define the network detection and response market. Dave holds an MBA from the University of Minnesota and a BA from Carleton College. So if y'all could help me welcome Dave up on the stage, I greatly appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that warm welcome, and it's awesome to be here in Houston. Sam Van Ryder and I have worked together, I don't know, 10+ years ago, and he used to always talk about this little get-together in Houston that he and the local security groups would get together and meet and talk about stuff. And now, he said 2,800 people are here. It's really impressive. I was actually at a conference in London last week, and I think you guys maybe have more people at your conference than they did. So well done, Houston. So I'm going to talk to you today about the future. I think it's a very exciting time in our industry, in cybersecurity. And I think just the pace of innovation and the pace of the problems we can solve is really just exploding. So I'm going to go over kind of the current state of the SOC, sort of how I envision maybe the SOC of the future might operate, and then we'll get into how we can get there, how you can go back to your organizations and say, how can we start getting to where we need our SOCs to be in the future? So the current state of the SOC sort of feels like this Sisyphean character over here who pushes that boulder up the hill, and right when they think they get to the top, it rolls back down. It's a really hard job to be in cybersecurity. How many people in here work in the SOC, are on security teams? Yeah, so you guys deal with this every day, where it's just like the alerts, the issues, the things 24/7 coming at you. It's a really hard job, so thank you for all that you do. I find it interesting that security to me is really a data problem, and it's not just not enough data, it's also too much data. It's kind of this weird dichotomy. We have way too much data for any human to look through, but we also don't have enough data to get all the visibility to really understand everything that's going on in our environments. And so we've tried as an industry to figure out how we can get the right data in the right place at the right time to make sense of everything going on in our environments. And this has really been a challenge for us as an industry. And I think if you look at the challenges of our industry, this is a hard job. The time that it takes to triage the alerts, to hunt and investigate, to respond, to remediate, you're probably not even left with any time in your day to actually be proactive. As you heard in the intro, I went to business school, and in business school, they teach us all about business operations. And in business operations, you're taught, okay, well, let's look at any process that we do as a business, and let's figure out ways that we can optimize and make it better. Let's measure those bottlenecks, and let's find if there's a process change, training of our people, a technology that we can use to reduce those bottlenecks and make our teams more efficient. And I think it's funny that Security Operations Center, the middle letters operations, but I don't think any SOC is actually measuring their bottlenecks. We probably have anecdotal evidence about like this takes a lot of time, but has anyone really gone into their organization and said, you know what, my team spends 40% of their time doing triage, or 90% of the time doing triage maybe. We don't necessarily have good data to even understand the problem that we're trying to solve. And I think we as an industry have really struggled to get the upper hand. We've really been struggling as an industry with the same issues for pretty much the last 2 decades. How many times have you seen a vendor come in and talk to you where they go, here's all the problems that you struggle with. It's great to hear from vendors about the problems you deal with every day, right? I'm sure you already know all this stuff. But those problems have been the same. We've had too many alerts forever. We've had not enough people forever. We've had not enough visibility and fragmented tools forever. We've been too slow, too manual forever. And it's really, I think, been a failure as an industry for us to solve this. And we're going up against attackers who have a clear goal. They want to cause harm. They want to steal data. They want to get into your environment. They now have a much bigger attack surface. They have way more doors to be able to get into your organization with cloud, with applications, with all the different areas of our environments. It's not the old days where you had your castle and your moat around it. Our businesses operate everywhere. And attackers are using new technologies to be able to get the upper hand, and they're embracing that innovation faster than we are as defenders. And so we're really in this asymmetrical battle, which is why we continue to lose as an industry. So SIM was supposed to solve this, right? We were like, okay, let's get these great data platforms, and we'll get all our logs and all our data in one place, and we'll write all these rules, and we'll detect things, and we'll see everything that's going on in our environment, and then we'll go address it, and we'll solve it. And SIM was supposed to solve this. But where are we with SIM? SIMs weren't built for the era that we have, where our organizations are generating petabytes of data a day. Our SIMs weren't built to be able to ingest and handle those volumes of data. Our budgets are not growing as fast as our data volumes. We cannot afford to capture and keep all the data that we need. And SIMs have become very hard to set up and configure and get value out of. And so when I go talk to CISOs, almost all of them are saying, what is the future of SIM? Because my SIM has been a major expenditure for my organization, and we're still struggling with these same problems. We're still struggling to figure out how to detect threats. And when we do detect threats, maybe it's 5 to 10 minutes after it happened and it's too late. So what did the industry do? We pulled out SOAR. Okay, well, what if we automate all this stuff? That'll give you guys the upper hand, right? That'll make your job easier. But then SOAR required more people to be able to operationalize and deploy and configure and update your playbooks. It became hard to integrate. And really, it's that old adage of, well, I have 14 tools. I should buy another tool to make those 14 tools more efficient. And now I have 15 tools that I have to operate and manage and upgrade and maintain. So SOAR was supposed to make people more efficient, supposed to maybe even replace people. And I think in many organizations, it actually ended up adding people, because now you needed people who could write Python, and you needed people who could update these playbooks, and you needed people who could update the APIs. So I really think we're at this inflection point, and I think AI is a big part of that, where we're seeing attackers starting to use AI and automation in ways that are somewhat more advanced than the way we are using it as defenders. On the inside, we're still struggling with that complexity of our organizations, those fragmented tools, with finding the right data, with getting the data where we need it in the right format to be able to make sense of that. But I think we have a huge opportunity ahead to fix that imbalance. And I think if we can use AI and data and automation in the right way, we can get that upper hand. So I'm sure you've heard a lot about AI today, and probably from all your vendors and at every security conference you've been at in the last 2 years. But I really see this as kind of the next industrial revolution. AI is fundamentally changing the way we even think about things and the way that we think about our organizations. And the pace of that innovation just gets faster and faster every year. So think to yourself, what do you think the SOC of the future will look like? And while you're thinking about that, I'll take you through some of what I think maybe the SOC of the future will look like. You've all heard this term agentic AI, and yes, it's a buzzword. But I think the SOC of the future, AI will be able to do the work that our analysts are doing today for those very time-consuming tasks that, frankly, humans just aren't good at. Humans aren't good at dealing with thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions or billions of data points. They're just not. Machines are. If we can train AI to act like those tier 1 and those tier 2 analysts, be able to triage our alerts, investigate our alerts, hunt for those latest threats that become known, to be able to automate those response actions. We can get to the point that our humans are freed up to do the things that are uniquely human. I think the presentation layer of our SOCs is going to change too. I don't know if your SOC looks like most of the SOCs I've walked into, but typically there's a bunch of monitors on the wall, and they have a bunch of dashboards up there. Is this ringing a bell? Bunch of pie charts, probably. And to me, I don't know what a human's supposed to do when that pie chart changes. If that pie chart goes from 18% to 19% for that red piece of the pie, what do you do? I don't know. Why do we have that view of our network of a pie chart when we can't action it? You can't do anything with it. There's no actually valid information there. I think in the future, we need to find new ways to present the data, and it might not be two-dimensional. Imagine you get into a room and your network can rise from the table with augmented reality, and you can visualize your network, and you can visualize the flows and where users are, and the threats and the attacks. You could consume a lot more information a lot faster as a human if we can change that presentation layer. Threat hunting. This is something I think most organizations aren't even doing today because they don't even have the time. But guess what? New threat intel, new threats become known every day. And I'm sure all of you who are in this industry, you love that when your boss comes in and says, hey, I saw in the Wall Street Journal this new attack. Are we vulnerable? Are we impacted by it? I'm sure you all love that question because it just ruined your week. You have to now go research it. You have to build queries. You have to wait for those things to come back. You have to look through all of your data. You have to write up a report to your boss whether you're impacted or not. And you just lost your whole week. If the latest threats are coming out, why can't we just feed those to an AI model that goes and hunts for all of those things? So when you come in the morning, it says, hey, here's the latest threats that were in the news. You're good. Or you got a problem. You need to go do something about it. That seems like a very good use of AI and something that I hope the SOC of the future has. Zero trust, I know, another buzzword. But I mean this in terms of the architectural design of our environments. We need to get to the point, and I think automation and AI can help us get to these points, where people aren't allowed to access everything all the time. We need to get to the point that they can access just what they need when they need it, and we need to get away from relying on usernames, passwords, static identities. So we need to really move to this architecture where we don't really trust anybody in our environment, and they have to verify and validate who they are. And as responders, we can revoke that access very quickly, or even the AI can revoke that access very quickly. So I believe the SOC of the future is going to have a lot more kind of zero trust concepts built into it. A bulk of our businesses have moved to the cloud, and I think our SOCs are still behind in terms of the understanding of the cloud environments, the access to the cloud environments, the skill sets that we need to properly understand the threats within the cloud, the environments within the cloud, the risks within the cloud. So I think the SOC of the future is going to have a dedicated cloud SOC that is solely focused on how can they find and identify and remediate threats in the cloud. And since we're here in Houston, probably makes sense to have an OT SOC as well, for those of you in the OT industries. But we need more specialization within our SOC. I think too many SOC organizations or teams, they don't necessarily understand all areas of the business or even have access. Maybe they do understand, but they don't even have access to all areas of their business to properly secure and prevent the attacks. So I think that we're going to need more specialized resources within the SOC. And I think we really need to solve our data problems. We really need to move from this kind of data swamp where we have costly data stores and we have to add a ton of structure to make sense of our data. And it's very manual with parsing and normalization and writing rules. And we need to get to the point that I think the future of the SOC is federated. There's so many companies out there right now who are like, we have a data lake, just send us all your data and your life will be great. Whether that's true or not, I think the future has to be federated. I think the days of putting all our data into one place so that we can make sense of it are past us. We need technologies that can go out and find the data, where that data lives, pull in the data that is relevant or that it might need into the system to be able to detect threats or give us the forensics we need. But we really need to focus on, and I think the SOCs of the future will be federated, They're going to have intelligent data pipelines that can route data and query data and access data wherever it lives. And I think hopefully we can get to the point too that we're not having to store, petabytes of raw log data, the majority of which is invaluable because all that raw data we can extract in the real-time stream, the relevant information out of it to be able to not have to do that search down the road. So that's kind of my ideas of where the SOC is headed. You guys maybe have some other ones that I'd love to hear about at some point. But how do we start this kind of journey? How do we start evolving our SOC? Change is hard. We don't even have enough time to respond to all the alerts that we're already getting. So how are we even going to go about actually changing what we have? And I'm guessing most of you have, every SOC's different, but this is probably similar to most of your organizations, right? We usually talk about people, process, technologies. And the people, usually you have analysts, responders, maybe some hunters, you have some management. On the technology, I'm guessing most of you have a SIM, maybe you have a SOAR, or some sort of automation. You probably have an EDR at this point, an endpoint product if not. You have threat intel, you have case management. And you have process. You probably have some defined playbooks, some compliance frameworks that you have to adhere to, and some procedures if something happens, right? So this is, I think, a simplified version of probably where most of you are today, but potentially you've moved beyond that. But I think we need to evolve. We've been evolving as an industry over the last couple decades away from signatures, right? Signatures, looking for the known. If you think AV, IPS, et cetera, we are looking for the known stuff. As the threats became faster to come to market, signatures just couldn't keep up. So then we had more cloud-based tools where we said, okay, well, we'll use the power of the cloud and the scale of the cloud and people on top of that platform to be able to help find those threats in the environment. But I think where we need to get to is where the tech is actually doing the work of the people and helping people, not people driving tech, but tech assisting people. So think about it like a car, right? I think that middle bucket there, cars have advanced a lot from the days of a horse and buggy, but people are still operating them. We need to get to the point where the car can drive itself if you need it to. You can still take control if you need to of that car, but the car can drive itself. And that's where I think we need to think about our tools evolving, where we have tech assisting people. Now, there's been a lot of articles out there about kind of the autonomous SOC. And a lot of these headlines are like, it's a pipe dream, it'll never happen, it's not the right problem. And I think it just really comes down to how do you define autonomous SOC. Now, to me, an autonomous SOC does not mean that we don't need humans anymore, that we can just have a total self-defending network. Like, no, we need humans. Humans are important. But we need to free up the humans to be able to do the things that are uniquely human, the context that they can bring, the empathy, the understanding, the reasoning, the creative thought that comes into the things that we do. So I don't believe the autonomous SOC is a pipe dream. And frankly, I think it can help us kind of collapse the cybersecurity pyramid of pain here. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this before. But when we think about our SOCs, kind of starts with the known, the hash values, maybe you have some malicious IPs, domains, artifacts from your threats, all your different tooling, your techniques, tactics, procedures. But the problem is all of this stuff is very siloed. And so how can we use technology to bring all this stuff together so we're thinking about all of these things as a whole, and we're really collapsing that pain and replacing that pain by using AI and automation. So I think there's some clear areas of the SOC that can benefit from AI. And these are really time-consuming areas that today humans just aren't very efficient at, and it's incredibly time-consuming. Things like collecting evidence, doing investigations, monitoring, triage. If we're triggering thousands of alerts per day, humans are pretty terrible at this. It's just true. Responding and remediate. Okay. How long does it take today to recover a system even once you figure out what's happened to it? It's a time-consuming process. Generating those reports when your boss comes and asks you for something. These are all very time-consuming processes that humans just aren't very efficient at doing, and I think are huge opportunities for us to leverage AI. So kind of that potential of the autonomous SOC is that we can take our increasingly complex environments and we can use the power of AI and automation to detect threats faster, to investigate and respond to threats faster, and free up those humans to be able to do the more important work. So when I think about that evolution, there's kind of a maturity model that I like to talk about of where you might be in your SOC journey towards that autonomous SOC. Level 1, manual. You're not doing any automation, no AI, everything's completely manual. You have a simple source of detection logic. You're doing manual investigations for every alert that comes into your environment. Hopefully none of you are still in this state. But we kind of moved beyond that to level 1, where we said, okay, well, we can't look at every single thing that comes into our system. So let's write some correlation rules. Let's write some detection rules on top of that logic. And we'll have these rules start bringing some stuff together to be able to detect threats. So think SOAR, think SIM, et cetera. And in the last couple of years, we've kind of gotten to this AI assisted, where a lot of tools out there started saying, you know, hey, I have an LLM, I have a chatbot that can help interrogate this data. It can build some queries for me. It can maybe analyze those results. And hopefully you're at this level today. Maybe you're doing some sort of automation as well. But when I think about where we're headed towards that autonomous SOC, I think we can get to the point where we can use those LLMs for more. It's not just going to be a chatbot that helps you build queries, but it's actually going to build detection logic for you. It's actually going to do those hunts for you. And we can start getting to the point that it's acting more agentic. It's acting like a tier 1 analyst. We train it in the same way that we would train a tier 1 or tier 2 analyst. We look at the workflows that they do, and we train the AI to do that. And if we can do that, I really think we can get to this full autonomy where when you come in the morning, all of your alerts have been triaged. They've already been initially investigated, where the AI connects out to all the different various tools. The human analyst at that point should be able to read a summary with all the evidence that has been collected of why it came to that conclusion. Click a button, automate the response. That to me is the autonomous SOC and something that I think is achievable in the near future. So when we think about building that autonomous SOC, how will that architecture change? And I think from a technology standpoint, we're going to need to think about SIM in a new way. We're going to need to think about SIMs that are built for the scale, performance, cost, with automation, AI built into them. We're going to need to think about those agentic SOC analysts, those AI agents that'll go out and act like our analysts. If I go into a SOC today and I watch any of you doing your jobs, usually I see an analyst with 37 browser tabs open and Notepad, and they're copying stuff into it. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Why can't we have the agentic AI agents just go do that stuff for us, collect that data for us, summarize that data for us? I think we're also, the autonomous SOC is going to have AI actually protecting AI, because we're building all these AI tools and we're giving it access to all of the data within our organizations, potentially. We should probably secure those as well and make sure that the AIs, don't turn to Skynet or something. That's hyperbole, obviously, but I think we need tools, and we need to start thinking about how we actually secure the AI tools themselves. So the autonomous SOC will need that. And I think we're going to need technologies where our threat intel is automatically being curated, our hunting's already been done, and we're using AI, whether that's for anomalies or machine learning or correlation, to be able to stitch that data together to be able to detect threats. And I think our people are going to change. I don't think we're going to need as many level 1, level 2 analysts. Now, if you're a level 1 or level 2 analyst, don't worry. I think you still have a future in this industry. We have a huge gap in the number of people who do this work. But I also think that you need to start thinking about how you're going to evolve your skill set, because maybe we don't need you to look at 1,000 alerts every day, but maybe we need you to start understanding how these AI models work, how you can help train the models, give feedback into the models, help with writing prompts for the AI, et cetera. So I think that the skill sets are going to have to change. And this is very similar to other industrial revolutions. If you think about like that manufacturing line, where we replaced the human putting the widget on the device, over and over again every day with a robot. But then we still needed those humans to build the robots, to maintain the robots, to program the robots, right? And I think we're going to see that same thing happen in the SOC. And our processes are going to have to become a lot more automated across the board. Now, you've probably heard me mention agentic AI a few times, and Gen AI, and it's all buzzwords out there, right? But just to kind of boil that down, Gen AI, I really like to think of Gen AI as assisting me in doing my work. So that's the chat GPTs of the world, where you go ask it a question, you ask it to write something, you ask it to format your code. That's Gen AI. But agentic AI is where it'll perform the work for you without you having to ask it. And that's where we need this evolution to happen. It's one thing to come to your Gen AI and say, hey, have I seen this IOC in my environment? But what if the AI just went and looked for all those IOCs that came in today and just told you? That's agentic. I think when you think about evolving your SOC, we need to be more proactive. And I really do believe that AI and automation can really help in a variety of areas. First one being vulnerability scanning. It's actually not that hard to scan for vulnerabilities, right? But the problem is actually doing something about it. Thousands of vulnerabilities found in your environment. How long does it take you to patch or fix each one? A lot of time. So what if we can get AI involved in there to not only scan for those vulnerabilities, but maybe it can actually analyze your data to say, you know what, the last person who actually pushed an update to that system was this person. The last person who updated that application was this person. Can I create an automatic workflow that goes out to them and says, hey, I see that you're patching next Saturday. You need to patch this vulnerability as well. We can remove a lot of that manual process. Attack simulation. Attackers are already doing this. They're leveraging AI and automation to find the weak spots, the soft spots in our environments. We need to be doing that to ourselves. We need to be able to have our AI engines act like an attacker, scan our network, be able to find those threats that are lurking that we don't even know about, those misconfigurations we don't even know about. As I've said before, the hunting, those new threats that came out today, why don't we just go look for them for you? AI models can get access to threat intel just like humans can. Those latest threats, let's just go hunt for them. You can even ask AI, what is the biggest risk to my organization? What are the biggest things that if we were compromised would cause an outage? It could probably tell you, right, if it had access to the right data. So this kind of continuous posture management across AI, cloud data, I mean, these are things that AI can uniquely do in real time to be able to find those soft spots and reduce your risk. Detections, we've talked a lot about this as well. But I think we have huge opportunities to be able to use AI to improve the quality of our detections. But we can't just say every behavioral change or every anomaly is a threat. We need to use AI to actually start correlating and analyzing that signal together to be able to find that threat. And I think that's the power of AI, is that we don't have to write these manual correlation rules anymore or look at every behavioral change that a user made or every anomaly or new thing that we see in the environment. Those are all interesting data points. But we need to make sense of those data points across our environment. And I think there's huge opportunities for AI there. But that said, just throwing AI and automation on top of all of our legacy tools, I don't think it's necessarily going to work very well. First of all, our tools that probably most of you are using today don't scale to the volumes of data that we need. AI can analyze billions and trillions of data points, but if you don't have a system that can actually collect and store that data, your AI is not going to be very effective. I think the future of AI is open and federated. When you think about platforms that you're going to be standardizing on, they need to be open. They need APIs. They need to be able to be queried from outside. They need to be able to be searched. They need to be able to send data wherever it needs to be sent. So when you think about platforms, don't buy into platforms that are kind of a closed ecosystem, but something that's open, that can integrate with all of your tools and bring your tools together. I think cost. We can't just suddenly throw a bunch of data into our legacy SIEM. We probably can't afford it. Probably won't scale either, or it will probably have terrible performance. But we need something cost-effective that can scale as our businesses scale, as those volumes of data grow exponentially. I think speed is critical as well. If it takes you 30 minutes, an hour, to get back a search result from your SIEM or your data lake today, guess what? AI on top of that's not going to be any faster. You want your AI have to go get a cup of coffee and wait for 30 minutes? That's kind of what we're doing today manually. So we need a platform that actually get those results. Otherwise, we're not really seeing the benefits of AI if it's not fast enough. I think we need to think about the data pipelining problem, and this goes back to the federation of how can we get the right data in the right place, in the right format, so the AI can actually make sense of it. And it's got to be real time. You know, I was talking to a CISO last week for a major gas station, I guess I'll call it. And they were saying in their legacy SIM, their detection rules would take 5+ minutes to trigger. And they were trying to detect fraud at the pump. So if that didn't trigger in if it took 5 to 6 minutes to detect fraud, that driver's gone. There's nothing they can do about it. Even if they picked up the phone immediately when it triggered, called the gas station. But moving to a system that could detect that in 1 or 2 seconds, that person who just committed fraud is probably still standing at the pump and they can do something about it, right? So your business needs real-time detections. We need platforms that can detect in real time. We can't have this delay of, well, we have to get the right data in the right place, the right format to be able to, detect a threat. We need to be able to detect that in real time. So I think we've been accepting of mean time to detect, mean time to respond kind of metrics in the hours or even days, and it's just unacceptable. In the current world, we need data ingested and available in seconds. We need to be able to search across all of our data sources in seconds. And we need to be able to detect threats in seconds, as I just mentioned in that example with the fraud. How many people feel like their systems today, their platforms today, get anywhere close to this? That when you do a query, you can get back results in seconds, that you can search and detect all of that stuff in near real time. These are the things you need to be demanding of your platforms as you evolve your SOC. I mentioned kind of the need for a cloud security operations center, and I think what's exciting right now is the industry is really building out more of an ecosystem. I think the cloud, there wasn't like a reference architecture of how we secure the cloud, but I think that's changing. There's been a lot of new products and new acronyms, right? I'm sure you're all sick of the million acronyms in the cloud space. But the reality is we need cloud-specific tools that understand the cloud threat landscape, that understand cloud threats, and we need people who have the expertise and knowledge to be able to use those tools. And I mentioned it before, but we really need to evolve SOC visualizations. And I don't mean to call out any vendor on this slide because everyone kind of looks like this. But we can do better than this. I mean, it seems like dashboards, reporting, visualizations for the SOC are kind of an afterthought. They're kind of like, well, we need something on the wall, so we'll throw this up there. We really need to think how we can make the data actionable, how we can visualize data, because humans can make sense of a lot more data visually than they can, by reading a bunch of lines of text. So how do we change these visualizations beyond just the graphs, beyond just the pie charts, to be able to give our teams the upper hand? And so think about that as well. As I said at the beginning, kind of putting your operations in security operations. Maybe start actually measuring your team. How long do they spend doing each task? If you work in the SOC, how long do you spend doing each task? Maybe, kind of measure yourself. Like, oh man, I spent 3 hours today doing this, and 45 minutes doing this and didn't spend any time doing that. Maybe measure, define those bottlenecks, because if you're thinking about going down the path of AI and automation, you should focus on the things that are the biggest bottlenecks for your team today, or for you today. Address those bottlenecks and move on to the next one, and continuously improve your SOC to be able to identify and be more efficient. I know I've talked a lot about AI and ML and, yes, it's all amazing. But I understand, too, that there's a lot of challenges that all of our organizations face in adopting and making change and evolving our SOCs to really where they need to be in the future. That first one I mentioned, data and tooling. We have a lot of data in various different places. We have a lot of legacy tools. And ripping those things out, replacing those things, changing those architectures, it's not easy. It's going to require probably multiple leaders who really believe in making the change to be able to make that happen. I think most people don't know where to start. As I said before, if you aren't measuring your SOC, you aren't measuring the bottlenecks, where do I even start? It's kind of overwhelming. I know my SOC can be better. I know I can make it a better experience, for the people who work there. But where do I even start? Compliance, AI, data, it's going to be a hurdle to making the changes in your SOC. I often hear that legal is one of the biggest barriers to adopting AI, and for good reason. And so how can we adopt these tools in a safe way where legal isn't concerned about data leaving our organizations, but we can use the power of this new technology to be able to find and detect those threats faster. People and culture. As I said before, some people are going to be very wary of AI, especially if they feel like it's coming for their jobs. And so I think that you really have to start those conversations with the team of these technologies are to make your job better, your life better, to be able to upskill you, to learn new skills, because these things are not very efficient for you to be doing. Putting that widget on the assembly line isn't the best use of your time. We need to up-level you to a much higher level skill set where maybe you need to start understanding more about how to build and train and support models. And just AI trust interoperability. I think this is something that it's hard for anybody to trust. If AI, and we all know it's not 100% accurate, we've all heard of the hallucinations. So can we trust AI to make an accurate conclusion about something, and do we trust that that automation will actually have a good result, or could it potentially take out our network? Because we've all seen those false positives where, oh, google.com got my threat intel feed and now we're blocking everything. That was our DNS server. I think there's a lot of concerns there. And so there's definitely I was on a webinar a few months ago, and one of my panelists mentioned time to trust. I think time to trust is an interesting metric. It's really looking at what is the time where we can trust this model or we can trust that automation so that we know that it is accurate and we can trust what it's doing enough that we can let it be fully automated or fully autonomous. And I think we need to make sure that our AI, too, is not just a black box. I think if we don't know how AI got to there, that's going to be a challenge. And one of the things that also has come up a lot around AI and machine learning and automation is, are humans going to forget how to do things? And I think that is a legitimate concern, because if you think about today, when I was a kid, I had a set of encyclopedias, right? And if I wanted to look something up, I'd have to go find, E and look up elephants or whatever and read about it. We have such instant access to information today that I don't really need to know anything about elephants right now, because if I need to, I can literally go to my phone and find everything I ever wanted to know about elephants. So if we are trusting AI to be able to understand our environments and understand the threats and write all the queries for us and analyze all the data, we need to make sure we don't actually lose the ability to do those things ourselves. Otherwise, we lose the ability to question the accuracy of the AI or question the decisions that it made. So I think if you're thinking about how to transform your SOC or how to get there, there's kind of two paths. The transform is obviously going to have a much bigger payout, but is also a lot harder to do. But if you are in an organization that is saying, you know what, we need to prepare for the future, we need to prepare our business for where the world's headed, so we need to kind of start from scratch and outline where we want to be, how we want to build that SOC, what's the right data platform. We need to start investing in tools that have AI foundational elements built into them. We need to take an automation-first approach. If it can be automated, we should do it. But that's hard, and it's going to require an organization that's willing to embrace that change. I think path two, well, probably doesn't get you everywhere you want to go. It can give you some paths to start heading in the right direction. So augment with a data lake. Build your detection content, get more cloud visibility, et cetera. And I think we can really get to this point where if we can focus on fixing what's broken, we can get those hours, those days of time to minutes, and we can really make this job something that doesn't burn people out. I mean, SOC analyst burnout is real. Every one of us in this industry probably works too many hours, is on call, is stressed a lot of the time. We have huge opportunities to improve the quality of life for people in security and to be able to reduce the risk and protect our businesses in a better way. And I think it's worth investing in these types of things. So if we get back to that kind of balance that I said where we were in the imbalance versus the attackers, and we can embrace AI and automation and data in ways that our attackers already have, we're going to have better outcomes for our organizations. We're going to have better working relationships, better quality of life for our teams. And ultimately, we're going to allow things like agentic AI to be able to do the work that are just inefficient for humans to be doing. And I think we're going to get to a much better place. So just in terms of final takeaways, I don't know how much time I have for questions here. Where am I? Yeah, a few more minutes. The AI evolution is now. Like, this may sound a little bit like science fiction, but I honestly think most of the stuff that I talked about, it's coming in the next probably couple of years where it'll be, realistic. It's probably coming sooner, but there'll be some kinks to work out. But this is happening now. And so thinking about your organization, how you can start working towards that so that you don't get left behind and you don't get left in a world where the attackers are just hammering you and you can't respond at the pace and velocity that they are. I think that levels of autonomy, you need to think about what's going to work for your organization. Not everyone can embrace, a truly autonomous SOC. But what are the levels of autonomy that you're willing to accept? What are those trust elements where you can trust the AI, you can trust the automation? And start preparing your humans for that shift. Whether it's yourself or you have a team, think about the ways that you can be learning and changing your skill set to be ready for the future. And think about a world where maybe you don't have a tier 1 and tier 2 and, tier 3 even SOC. And how would that look in your organization? And how would you use those resources to be able to do things that you probably don't have time to do today? And I guess the final thought that I'll leave you with is just think about where you want to evolve your SOC and put together a strategy. Hopefully you took away, some ideas or some thoughts that you can take back to your organization. But I think if we're not planning for the future and we're still just living in this reactive world, we're not going to be where we need to be as an industry. So with that, I really appreciate you guys attending the talk today. I know there was a lot of talks, including, I think, Dimitri was signing books, so I do appreciate and feel honored that you came to my session. I don't know if we have time for questions, but I am happy to answer any questions, or if you want to come up and talk to me afterwards, I'm happy to talk about any of these topics and learn from you. If you agree, disagree, liked something, didn't like something, we're all in this together, and I think we can learn a lot from each other. So, thank you.
So we do have time for questions. I just ask if y'all raise your hands, and I'll run down and.
So I have a question regarding, you basically said that, bringing in AI can definitely help handle the tier 1 and tier 2 stuff. You said there would still be a place for tier 1 and tier 2 analysts, but the focus was on that, that level 3 analyst or whatever. So what does that do for training, for the development program? If somebody's going to come in, yeah, they have they're going to need a different skill set for level 1 and level 2, but level 3 it's already, hard enough to find. I think that would put that even more out of reach by taking a lot of the level 1 and level 2 stuff away from people. They don't have that up ramp to the level 3.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a couple of, I think, really interesting points there. I mean, if you look at like the data, ISC squared or whoever, we're about 2 million people short of the amount of qualified people in our industry. So we definitely have a talent shortage that I'm hopeful that AI can help replace. But I also think that, it actually will lower the barriers of entry to a certain extent because, today, if you look at, most of the entry-level security positions, they all want 10 years of experience, right? It's not very entry-level. But I think by kind of lowering those barriers to entry, we can bring people in and we can start training them on the things that are uniquely, context that the human can bring to it. Like a tier 3 analyst does need a different skill set that maybe you can't train AI, but they need to understand our business, they need to understand our assets, they need to understand our users, they need to understand how things normally operate, right? So you might actually have to start giving them more of the the context and information when you're onboarding new people, because that's stuff that is really hard to give to an AI, right? Like you can give AI all the logs in the world, but it doesn't necessarily know that this, laptop named ABC123 is our CEO. But like, hopefully that tier 3 analyst would recognize that username on the system and be like, oh, that's our CEO, that kind of stuff. So I think that it is going to have to change those skill sets. I also think that we're going to need to start hiring more, people with data science and machine learning and prompt engineering and stuff background. So I think the trainings are going to have to change when we're onboarding. But it's really going to be, what are the things that this AI is not good at that I don't have automated, and we're going to have to train our new hires on those things instead. Yeah.
And one other question, a little different. So I think things like MTTR and certain KPIs are kind of antiquated.
Yep.
They don't really paint an accurate picture, but how do we define success in the modern AI-driven SOC to, let's say, a CEO and a board of executives? What should we be looking at instead of kind of it took us this long to respond to an incident. Okay, well, CEO's going to say, well, what impact did that incident have,
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. Most of the dwell times today are, for undetected threats are still in the months. So, really what most boards are concerned about is risk reduction, right? And so, the mean time to respond really is about reducing risk. Well, if we detected it within a day, that reduced potentially the risk to our organization, right? So I think if you take that step back and say, well, how do we reduce the risk? And if you're able to use AI to free up your people or to even be more proactive, I think you're drastically reducing your risk. And this is where I think boards are going to get excited when you're saying, hey, we now can patch our systems in days and it used to take us months. We now can find those threats before the attackers find them. We can find those misconfigurations before an attacker finds them. We can do this stuff a lot faster. And I think just across the board, all those different things the SOC's doing, like all of that is about risk reduction and reducing the kind of attack surface. So I think that you definitely can make a case there. But you make a really good point. I don't think we do a great job of capturing good metrics for the SOC, and it's something that I think, business operations, guess what? Executives understand those things. We need to start running our security teams like we would any area of our business, where we find those bottlenecks, we optimize them. We can show the decrease in attacks, we can show the, velocity and all that stuff. So, good question.
Hi, Dave. Yeah, really great presentation. I definitely like the sentiment about how vendors love to trauma bond with you to get you to, move over to their solution. But in the realm of managed service providers, where do you see the future of them? I'm kind of in a spot where, very small team. So we originally used a service to help with headcount. But if this is ultimately something that we can do in-house, will there still be a large need for managed service providers in the future?
Yeah, this is really an interesting conversation that I've actually had internally with our own teams, right? Because we also do at SentinelOne. We of course have MDR type services, and we partner with hundreds of firms who do these things. And it's an obvious question of like, hey, well, if the AI can do the triage, the investigation, and the response for me, why do I need you anymore? And I kind of take the same step back of like the same reason. If you insourced it, you'd still need people. Those people are still going to be needed in the MSSP MDR. They're just going to be a lot more efficient. And the value they can bring, back to his point around, it's hard to find those tier 3 people. Well, I think the MSSPs, the MDRs can still be the people in the loop, but they're going to be able to be a lot faster and be able to help a lot more of their customers because of the use of AI and automation. So I think it's going to be the same value prop. I would hope maybe those services get cheaper though, because it doesn't require as many people to operate them. But the flip side of that is AI tools aren't cheap and automation's not cheap, and so you're probably spending those costs there as well. But I do think for some size organizations, they might not need their MSSP or their MDR anymore. I know there's probably some MSSPs who don't like me saying that, but they might get enough out of the AI to not need the humans involved. But I'm willing to bet that they don't have 24/7, 365 coverage and all that other stuff. So I'm hoping what it will do is it'll make the MSSPs more efficient, just like it would make our internal teams more efficient. Because that's really all they are, is just extensions of our team.
Yeah, and I think that's just where we're at. The size of the team probably makes sense for us to leverage AI versus the managed service provider. We're just at that state at this current point.
And I think this is going to be something we're going to have to learn too as the tech evolves. We're going to have to see how good it really can get because it's not there yet. You know.
Any other questions? Okay, I think that's it. Dave.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys' time. And like I said, I'll be around after if anyone wants to chat. So thank you.